All right, we're recording. All right, so you remember one of the places where we left off is this I am versus the way I wound up being. You kind of had a little trouble with this, the way you wound up being.
We understand.
Huh?
We understand now.
Yeah.
What?
We understand now.
You understand now?
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody give me an example so I can make sure that I know that you understand. Who has a way that say I am and then say the way I wound up being and then tell me how it's different? Somebody do that.
Maybe I'm a student of NaUKMA Academy,
Yes?
and then the way I wound up being, I'm a positive any person.
Okay, now is there a difference? Do you experience a difference?
Yeah.
What?
Then that's when I say I'm a student of NaUKMA Academy, it's true, and I can actually maybe change the situation. And when I say I want to be a positive person, I actually can be in some maybe situations sad or something like this. And it doesn't mean that I'm always positive. I'm always looking at some things in positive way and so on.
Okay, so since you're not always something,
Yes, there can be some maybe changes in
yes, you have flexibility. Everybody get that?
I have a question.
Go.
Okay, when I'm speaking about I'm not,
Yes,
I'm not dumb, for example.
I'm not dumb.
What should I say? The way I wound up not being dumb, or
The way
should
I wound
add
up being is not dumb.
is not dumb.
The way I wound up being is not dumb. So now you could be dumb if you need to be dumb,
Yes.
right? You might need to be dumb sometimes in order to produce whatever you're trying to produce, okay? All right, so do you, the stands and on the court structure, right? I didn't have you memorize the 5 terms. And, oh yeah, we had a big star. If you could give me an on the court term. So there's the following 2 terms, right?
Yeah.
So if you could give me a demonstration of on the court, if you can either do it on the court or talk about it, you know, like you can either do it as an explanation, like you could tell me what it is, or you can actually demonstrate on the court.
What it
Yeah, that's what I'm asking you. What is it?
is. Okay.
So on the court, I want you to demonstrate being on the court, or tell me in the stands what it is, what it looks like on the court. An
Now-
example. Yeah.
Now we are on the court, yeah, because when with this star we are on the court. Yeah. Without
Okay.
this star we are just looking how on the stands. Yes.
Yeah, that's getting close to it. That there's something that had you have the star. There's something you did on the court. So what you're talking about is a little bit of an explanation of it. It's not the court itself.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody looking in the stands was looking down, they would see somebody with a star, and in the stands they would say, well, he's on the court.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not exactly what I'm after. So there's terms. These are the terms. I want you to give me an example of on the court, being on the court. And you know this. It's just we're coming at it in another perspective. This is nothing hidden from you. So what's an example of on the court action?
Already always listening.
What?
Already always listening is
Yeah, that's a constraint, and when you are noticing what you're already always listening is, that is on the court. And there's something else I'm looking for.
We need to give an example of from real life.
Yeah, yeah. You can either do it or point
Maybe when I say, for example, then I know some tips or general things how to create a company. It's from the step. And when I say I know the plan how to make own company, it's maybe it's on the code. No?
No. Russ.
For example, when I want to teach somebody to do his own business, when I explain him, it's on the spec, yeah? But when I do it with him, it's
Yes.
on the code.
True. What gives you access to on the court? There's a certain thing that gives you access to on the court. We've been practicing it for ever since we started.
You take the responsibility.
What no? Responsibility?
Yes.
And being responsible is one of the 4 foundational elements. That's not what I'm after. On the court. What puts you on the court? There's a speech act that puts you on the court. What puts you on the court?
Action.
What?
Action. Each action.
Yeah, yes, yes. Action on the court. Yeah, you have access to the court. On the court, there's some action. What? Give me, show me action. Show me.
I mean, yeah, I'm talking with, and
Say that again.
I mean,
I'm in. That is yeah. Go ahead.
like,
Yeah.
I'm talking now with you, and I'm
Yes.
in the court.
Yes.
If I were just sitting and listening,
Yes, that's true. So let's go back to I'm in. What's that?
that means
Shall
that I am, that I'm acting and that I'm on the court.
I'm in. Okay.
Maybe
But that's
the decision to be on the court.
the decision. Okay. So how do you demonstrate the decision to be on the court? What puts you on the court? There's a certain speech act that puts you on the court. It puts you at risk too, by the way. But
You agree that
huh?
we put star here? We just decided that we are on
I am is an example of it.
Yes.
But I want you to get this. I want you to nail this more than that.
More than
I am, like I am here, right? I am participating. Yes. There, that's a speech act, but you know, can you identify which one it is? So show me on the court. What do you see when you see someone on the court?
Someone in the court, we see.
What puts you on the court?
mm,
What puts you on the court?
Participation maybe.
Yeah, what puts you as a participant? What puts you participating?
Interaction.
Huh?
Interaction.
Interaction, yes. On the court. What puts you on the court?
Your decision.
Huh?
Your decision.
What?
Your
Decision.
decision.
Yes, yes, a decision to do something. And then, but then you take some action.
Yes.
And what is that when you take some action and people know you made a decision?
I will do it.
I will do it is an example. I will do it is an example. Okay?
Promises.
And what do you call that when someone says, I will do it?
Promise.
A promise. Yes. That is a speech. That puts you on the court, doesn't it? I promise. I will. You can count on me. Yeah? Those are speech acts that put you on the court. Can you see that? Okay, good. It's different than observing, describing, analyzing, explaining, and commenting on. It is. So when you're as lived experience in real time, what that looks like is, I promise. And then you say whatever you say. Okay, good. All right. Okay, what will be covered in this section? 208. Okay, this is where we start. What you discovered completing your assignment, we just did that. Is there anything that anybody wants to share? Anything that you're discovering? Anything you want to report? Anything unfinished business? How about? Yeah, buts. What if? Anything like that? Before we start this next section. Oh, you said yours, right? Okay. So the three fundamental structural elements that make up this course: the foundation, the contextual framework, and the ontological constraints. That's what we'll be covering in this session, right? That's those things over there. All right, so we just did this, I am versus the way I wound up being. All right, creating a context for your participation in this course, a review. We've said this once before. The sole objective of this course is to leave participants who complete the course actually being leaders and exercising leadership effectively as their natural self-expression. If you create the following context for your participation in this course, and remember it when you find yourself not engaged or thinking that what is being dealt with is not relevant, the following context, come in. Is there somebody at the door?
No.
Oh, okay. The following context will empower and enable you in dealing with what must be dealt with in order for you to master what must be mastered, for you to realize the purpose of the course. So this is the if you create the following context for your participation, this is the context. Everything dealt with in this course and the way it is delivered has been specifically designed to leave me exercising leadership effect successfully. That's the context that you will create when you start, when you find yourself not engaged or thinking what is being dealt with is not relevant, right? So there's this group work, and I suggest that you discuss among yourselves what's happening, what you're seeing. I'm not going to put you in groups and give you assignments and have you practice, but you're welcome to do that. What will be covered in this section, right? I said the first three, the power of a context to use you. All right, so here's the three fundamental structural elements that make up this course: the foundation, the contextual framework, and ontological constraints. So here we go with the foundation. The first of the fundamental structural elements that make up this course is mastering the four factors that form the foundation for being a leader and the effective exercise of leadership. These four factors are integrity, authenticity, being committed to something bigger than yourself, being cause in the matter. Without this foundation for being a leader, while you may be given a role of leader, or even have a title, and perhaps even the authority and decision rights, you can forget about actually being a leader and exercising leadership effectively. The second of the three fundamental structural elements that make up this course, continued, the contextual framework. In summary, the four-part contextual framework utilized in this course is a unique context for being a leader and exercising leadership effectively that leaves you in any leadership situation, being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. For you to be a leader and exercise leadership effectively as your natural self-expression, what it is to be a leader and what it is to exercise leadership effectively must exist for you as a context that uses you. You will have mastered the contextual framework so that it is a context that uses you and leaves you being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression when you have discovered for yourself the four aspects of the contextual framework so that they have become a whole. Contextual framework. You will remember from your pre-course reading that the four aspects of the contextual framework are as follows. Leader and leadership, each from the following perspectives or approaches. They're listed up there too. What leader and leadership are as linguistic abstractions, what leader and leadership are as phenomena, what leader and leadership are as concepts, what leader and leadership are as terms. Definition of the terms of the four aspects. What is linguistic abstraction? We mean by linguistic abstraction is based on the dictionary definitions of these two words. An abstract entity that is created, constructed in language, and generates a realm of possibility that is separate and distinct from, that is, exists apart from, instances are examples of itself, are from concepts are definitions of itself. No, we are not using abstraction as it is thought of in the Platonic forms notation of an abstraction, where forms are abstract entities that exist a priori. A linguistic abstraction is constructed. It does not exist a priori. You get that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding?
No.
I had to go to the dictionary for me to get this for myself. Huh?
We know all the words.
Yeah, but, okay. A linguistic abstraction. You know what a linguistic abstraction is? Huh?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, okay. Cool. I'm impressed. Alright. Leadership per se, that is leadership as leadership, is a linguistic abstraction. As was citizen, when the ancient Greeks created citizen as a linguistic abstraction that brought citizen into being as a new realm of possibility. Leader and leadership as linguistic abstractions create a conversational domain in which leader and leadership can be distinguished as they are actually lived. What is phenomenon? Drawing on the definition of phenomenon in Webster's dictionary, an event, circumstance, or experience encountered through the senses. When leader or leadership is dealt with as a phenomenon, one is examining or dealing with leader or leadership as an actual instance or live example of being a leader or exercising leadership. Put simply, the question is, if I see or I'm impacted by leader or leadership, what is it that I will see? Or what is it that will impact me? What is leadership as lived? What is concept? Drawing on the definition of concept in Webster's dictionary, an idea or thought, especially a generalized idea of a thing or class of things. When leader or leadership is dealt with as a concept, one is examining or dealing with the domain in which being a leader exists, or the domain in which leadership is exercised. Domain is defined as field of interest or concern. Put simply, the question is, in what domain do leader and leadership exist, or with what are leader and leadership concerned? What is term? Drawing on the definition of term in Webster's dictionary, a word or phrase having a limiting and definite meaning. When leader or leadership is dealt with as a term, one is examining or dealing with a definition that limits and makes definite the meaning of leader and leadership. Definition is defined as a brief, precise statement of what a word or expression means. Put simply, the question is, what are the definitions of leader and leadership? Any questions so far? How about you? All right. So here's the three fundamental structural elements that make up this course. Number 3, the ontological constraints. The third of the 3 fundamental structural elements that make up this course. Having mastered a context that leaves you being a leader and effectively exercising leadership as your natural self-expression, what is left is to remove from the way you wound up being what limits or distorts your natural self-expression. Most of us think that the way we are being and acting is our natural self-expression. However, as you will see, our natural self-expression is a virtually unconstrained freedom to be and act. Unfortunately, that freedom is limited and distorted by certain ontological constraints that have become a part of the way we wound up being, along with certain patterns of action. As a result of these constraints on our freedom, each of us gets stuck with idiosyncratic, personal ways of being and acting that allow us to succeed in some situations, but which leave us at best getting by in others, and unfortunately failing in yet others. Good. The strategy we use to get by with the way we wound up being. In our formative years, when we were little, virtually all of us begin to develop a certain strategy for avoiding failing while we continue. Let me give you that again. In our formative years, virtually all of us begin to develop a certain strategy for avoiding failure that we continue to rely on as life unfolds. The first half of the strategy is to attempt to avoid failing by simply staying away from situations that don't fit with the way we wound up being, don't fit our set repertoire for being and acting. The other half of the strategy is to attempt to succeed by polishing that set repertoire for being and acting and seeking out opportunities in which we can succeed by utilizing our set repertoire. Given that leaders cannot choose the situations that require leadership, if you are to be a leader, this strategy won't work. About the nature of our ontological, perceptual, and functional constraints. Some of the ontological, perceptual, and functional constraints that limit our opportunity set for being and acting are inherent in and shared by all people. A consequence, without effective intervention, of the way our brains work. Others of these obstacles are personal and idiosyncratic, a result of a person's individual history and experience. The point is, until you remove these constraints, you will have no access to ways of being and acting that lie outside the way you wound up being. Your current personal opportunity set for being and acting. Without dealing with these limitations on your way of being and acting, there may be leadership situations in which the way you wound up being will be inadequate. However, there will be many situations where it will not. And even when it is adequate, it may not be optimal, i.e., as effective as it could be. During the course, we will continue to provide you with opportunities to identify and remove, or at least substantially relax, those personal, ontological, perceptual, and functional constraints that limit those ways of being and acting that are critical to being a leader and to the effective exercise of leadership in any situation. Realizing the promise of the course. Having mastered the 4 factors that give you the foundation required for being a leader and exercising leadership effectively: integrity, authenticity, being committed to something bigger than yourself, and being cause in the matter. And 2, having mastered the contextual framework for leader and leadership as a context that leaves you being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. And 3, having effectively dealt with the ontological, perceptual, and functional constraints that limit or distort your natural self-expression, you will have realized the promise of this course. The power of a context fusion. So, anybody have anything you want to say about what we've covered so far?
No.
No? All right. Onward. Goodbye. As as the second of the three fundamental structural elements that make up this course, we promise to provide you with a context that, when mastered, will lead you in any leadership situation, being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. Is that for me?
No.
Oh. Okay, so we're now talking about the second of the three fundamental structural elements that make up this course. Contextual framework. Before working to master this context, you must get yourself clear about the power of a context to shape the way a situation occurs for you. And that your way of being and acting in that situation will be naturally correlated with the situation occurring for you in that way. What we are saying is that being a leader and exercising leadership effectively is an outcome of the way the situation in which you are leading occurs for you. And that the way a situation occurs for you is shaped by the context you have for that situation. What is meant by a context that uses you? Webster's dictionary defines context as 1, the part or parts of a written or spoken passage preceding or following a particular word or group of words that's so intimately associated with them as to throw light upon their meaning. 2, the interrelated conditions in which something exists or occurs. Neither of these definitions define what is meant by the kind of a context that uses you. While it is true that both dictionary definitions hint at the fact that a context shapes the way something occurs for you, the kind of context that uses you does so such that your whole way of being and acting in that situation is naturally correlated with the situation occurring for you in that way. Alright, you will remember that we spoke about the specialized conversational domain, linguistic domain, through which a physician comprehends and interacts with the human body. That is, the conversational domain required for the expert practice of medicine. This is an example of a conversational domain that becomes a context that uses you. Once mastered by a physician, that conversational domain becomes the context that uses that physician. That context shapes the way the human body and its function occur for the physician, and does so such that the physician's natural way of being and acting is correlated with the body and its function occurring in that way. You get that, Rustic?
Not exactly.
Alright. I'm glad you're saying that, because you got this already. Alright, so we're going to spend the next part fleshing that out, the context that uses you in occurring. Okay. The difference between conditions and context. So please note that while we said Webster defines context as the interrelated conditions in which something exists or occurs, we distinguish between the conditions of a leadership situation, that is, the objective circumstances that make up that situation, and the context the leader creates in which to deal with those conditions, circumstances. It is important for you to create these two distinctions for yourself right now. Namely, 1, the objective circumstances of the situation you're dealing with, the conditions with which you are confronted. 2, the context you create that shapes the way those circumstances occur for you and those you are leading, with which your actions will be correlated. More about this important distinction for being a leader and exercising leadership later. So there's the conditions and the context, right? Alright, the power of a context that uses you. Earlier we shared 2 simple examples of the power of a context. Remember the kite and grandmother? If you don't, you'll have to see it in the previous lesson. we will now demonstrate a few examples of the power of a context to shape the way a situation occurs for you and show that your way of being and your actions are naturally correlated with the way in which that situation occurs for you. Do you understand correlated?
Yeah.
Okay. What we have said so far, and the examples we shared with you about the power of context, and the two examples we will share with you now will likely convince you of the power of context. However, until you discover for yourself the power of context to impact your way of being and acting, the context for leader and leadership you will create for yourself in the course won't leave you being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. Playing the violin in a subway. What does that got to do with it? Dressed in jeans and a baseball cap. A 39-year-old fiddler. You know what a fiddler is? Somebody who plays a violin. Fiddler. Stood against a wall next to a trash can at the L'Enfant Plaza metro station in Washington, D.C. He looked like any other street musician trying to make a buck. During the 43 minutes he played his violin, researchers watched 1,097 people pass by during the morning rush hour. It took 3 minutes before someone even gazed in his direction, and even longer before any money was thrown into his violin case. Most people did not notice the musician. Some were talking on cell phones, others listened to iPods. Masterful pieces such as Bach's Chancon, Franz Schubert's Ave Maria, and Manuel Ponce's Estrellita were passed off as nothing more than generic classical music. That day, the fiddler made $32.17, or 75 cents a minute. All right. When situated in an upscale concert hall dressed in black, the same 39-year-old fiddler, Joshua Bell, on the same $3.5 million Stradivari violin, commands up to $1,000 a minute playing the exact same masterpiece. This elite musician is said to be one of the finest classical musicians in the world, playing some of the most elegant music ever written on one of the most valuable violins ever made. Within the context of a subway street musician, a measly 7 people were moved to stop and listen before walking by. Within the context of a famous concert hall musician, thousands of listeners invest significant money to hear and be moved by Bell's music, often with standing room only. The context uses you in that it shapes your way of being, which includes your perceptions, imagination, emotions, thinking, and as a consequence, the context shapes your actions. Anybody have anything you want to say about that? Huh? Say that out loud. What?
No, I mean that the distinguish between the two situations that it's such a sad situation because it's called that people are equally talented and they are, or I don't.
Це один і той самий.
What?
Це один і той самий чувак.
What?
Це один і той самий чувак грав.
Ні, там два різні.
Ні.
А ти
Це колишній музикант вийшов на вулиці.
It was the same guy, Joshua Bell. Did you?
Yeah, I got it now.
Oh, okay. And given the context of a subway station and a hat on, the hat on the ground, the $3.5 million Stradivarius violin, and and it got the best violinist in the world playing the best music in the world. just wasn't even noticed, right?
So
Yeah.
the problem is to choose the right context for ourselves, but sometimes it depends on other people. Maybe it's more the problem of people that they don't notice that person, but not the problem of this person that he chooses to play
Oh
something.
yeah, he was playing as beautifully as he ever played, right? On the same violin that he plays when he's in performing. It was the same guy, the same violin, the same music, but the context, subway station versus Carnegie Concert Hall, that context gave different actions, emotions, feelings. It gave a different world for the participants. Yeah? All right, so here's another example. The being